everybody have a seat because we're going to start.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay within those 100 pages now.
I know. That's why I have it highlighted, and I'll try to keep you guys on track.
Oh, okay. Cause I might be jumping to something.
I know. But we can jump. It's fine. We want to pull people in, and we want to show people how exciting this book is.
I didn't get to highlight a lot.
So I have it highlighted. We're good. Don't worry.
I read it. I couldn't put it down. I was like,
hey, everybody. Alexa, set our alarm for 20 minutes from now. We don't need this alarm.
20 minutes. Starting now.
Okay, put your thing on. Yeah, you have to wear it. You don't want to wear it?
You can wear it.
Okay, all right. You may not be heard. I'll put mine on.
It's okay. I don't want to be heard.
Oh, okay. All right. Hey, everybody. We are coming to you live. We want to start. This book is so exciting. Everybody, come close. Come close. This book's so exciting. Everybody here loves it. We hope that you guys get a chance to read it. Trevor Noah, Born a Crime. I mean, if you want to start your reading journey, this is like the way to start. Are we started? I think we are. Yeah, we're live. Because the book's really funny, it's exciting, it has like some historical content to it, and then like everyone can relate. Like if you're that rebellious person, you can relate. If you are like a churchgoer, you just love God, that's all you care about, there's a character in here for you that you can totally relate to. If you believe in miracles, there's a miracle in this book. Anything that you could imagine that is totally entertaining, it's in this book. You know what I mean? If you've like had a transformation in your life where you used to do a certain thing and now you're doing something else, that's going on in this book too. So we're just going to start. We're only covering the first 100 pages, not because we didn't read this book, because this book is easy to read. You're going to love it. Just because we want to pull you in. We want you to get this book and we want you to read it. We're going to cover the first 100 pages today. In 2 weeks, we'll cover the other 200 pages. And then the last week, we'll cover the other 100 pages because we just want to give you a chance to like get this book and get in on the discussion. Like, this book's so awesome. What did you think? Just general, what did you think about the book, Mildred?
I couldn't put the book down. When I started reading it, I took it on vacation with me. And every chance, every opportunity I got, I had the book. And my sister was like, that book must be really interesting. So, yeah, for me to carry it around with me and read it every chance, yeah, it's a good book to read.
So, Mom, what did you think about the book? Gabrielle?
I thought it was very interesting, very funny, but also very sad when you realize what these people had to go through and how they were treated, and that it wasn't really that well known, you know, like as Trevor said, like Hitler, they kept paperwork and they wrote everything down, what they did and so on, you know, and even with the slaveholders, they had journals, how many slaves they bought, killed, died, and whatever else, you know. There in South Africa, there is no documentation, basically.
Yeah, so obviously the story tells you about apartheid, that's what my mom's referring to, but there is so much more to the story than this. I don't want you to feel like this, if you're like not into history or you're not into like, really this is pretty oppressing if you think about it. If you're not into stuff like that, like, oh my God, I can't read that. Yes, you can, because it is told from a personal point of view with a sense of humor, and also really just talks about the love of a family.
Yes.
Don't you think?
Yes.
And really, the book, I love this picture. So this is Trevor Noah and his mom. So you can see, like, even that black and white picture, there's some contrast there.
Yeah. Trevor described it how he perceives it. He didn't know anything different. That's why it wasn't that hard for him. But in the aftermath, when you think about it, you know, that's when the sad part comes.
Yeah, but again, his mom raised him so good that at the end, when he was, what did he say? When he was like in the 19 years old or out of high school, and he had met some other people that had been born biracially, because that's a crime. That's why this book's called A Crime. They were like, well, we left. We didn't stick around. And then he went up to his mom and he was like, Mom, why didn't we leave?
Right.
And she was like,
why was that not an option?
Here. This is me. I'm not running from my neighborhood just because someone's doing something that's not right. And I know it's not right, and I'm not raising you like that. And she raised him as a free person.
Yes.
And that's what I thought was really cool too. You can scoot back in, Mom. I just had to fix that thing over there. So that's what I love, and I love like the book. He started writing the book like with the idea I'm telling my story, and then at the end of the book he realized his story only really goes beyond his mom.
Right.
Like his story is him and his mom's story, because the way she raised him and just everything that how they lived together, it was just like she was his teammate, and he was just telling his story about how he and his teammate
Survived.
really survived. Like there's a part in the book where they're eating worms.
Yes.
And they're not delicious worms. It's the worst thing in the world. And then there's a part in the book where he says, you're as rich as the food that you eat, which is so true. Like even in America, like you're either on ramen noodles or you're eating steak. You know.
If you had dessert, you're doing good. His
Yeah,
mom said.
yeah. And then like his idea of getting ahead in the world was, his mom would look at him every time like he came around, and she'd be like, "Did you have dessert? Did you have seconds? Did you get your dessert?" Like that was their thing, because when he was little, he was always like, when I get big, or when I accomplish what I want to accomplish, I'll know my worth by my ability to get dessert with every meal.
Yes.
Trevor Noah was a fat kid who loved to eat, and unfortunately was born in poverty.
Yes.
That's a struggle right there.
Yes. Right.
So we're going to start. And I thought the book really is, for my mother, my first fan, thank you for making me a man. That's kind of how it starts out, and then it kind of goes into this immoral act, 1927. And Mildred, you want to read that? Just because we do want you to understand like the situation that he's in, and then we'll start with just the laughter of the book.
Immorality Act 1927, to prohibit illicit carnal intercourse between Europeans and natives, and other acts of relations thereto. Be it enacted by the King's most excellent Majesty, the Senate and the House of Assembly of the Union of South Africa, as follows. Number 1. Any European male who has illicit carnal intercourse with a native female, and any native male who has illicit carnal intercourse with a European female, shall be equally of an offense and liable on conviction to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 5 years. Number 2. Any native female who permits any European male to have illicit carnal intercourse with her, and any European female who permits any native male to have illicit carnal intercourse with her, shall be guilty of an offense and liable on conviction to imprisonment for a period not to exceed 4 years.
All right. And then I'll just let you know that was still in effect until Trevor Noah was 5 years old. And then it was still like the walls were tumbling down for another 5 to 10 years. And there was a lot of war and bloodshed during that time. And it wasn't so much like with white people. It was more with people of color, because they had turned people against each other. And then there was just this, because they had never, you would both be black, but because you're different colors, it would create problems even between one another, because you had been living like that for 100 years almost.
Right.
And it had created like this hate between people, which is what they really were trying to do. But the beautiful thing about Trevor Noah is like he was like the first person to experience I believe he probably might have been the only person at that time to experience a world of freedom, just because the way his mom raised him.
Yes.
She did such a good job. Like, I love that lady.
He learned to interact with all.
Yes.
Yeah, she taught him all the different languages.
Yes.
Yes.
English as number one, because that's how you get ahead in life.
So it was
and make
like
some money.
English was the first language he was taught, because she wanted him to be able to make a good living. That was the language of money, right? Isn't that what they said?
Yes.
Then the next English language he learned was it Zulu or
Her native.
Hosa? Zulu and
Zulu, and then I don't know how to pronounce
yeah,
it.
we don't Hosa and then Africana he learned too.
What's the
Afrikaans.
Tawana?
Yeah.
And Solota, and Venda, and Nabella. It's just a whole bunch of them.
And that was part of the division. They wanted it to be like, what did they say, Babylon in the Bible?
Yes.
A land of confusion where people aren't even able to like each other, because not only are you different colors and told that was a problem, then you're also trying to maintain your own they wanting you to maintain your own language, but also learn English, of course, because they want to make money off you. You know what I mean? So that was like another thing of division. And in the book it says the way to a man's heart is to know his language.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so true.
I want to read this first paragraph here. It says, at the time, black South Africans outnumbered white South Africans nearly 5-1. Yet we were divided into different tribes with different languages.
Yes.
And, you know, and I just repeated some of the languages. And it says, long before apartheid existed, these tribal factions clashed and warred with one another. Then white rule used that
Amnosty to divide
and conquer. All non-whites were systematically classified into various groups and subgroups. Then these groups were given differing levels of rights and privileges in order to keep them at odds.
Yes. So I'm gonna so that is just like, and sometimes when I read these things, I also think like how people in America segregate themselves. They say, oh, I'm light skinned, you're dark skinned, or this or that, and then they put beauty on it or money on it or whatever. It's like we kind of do that to ourselves in different areas of the time. This is just a place where they did it like system-wide.
Well, and this is the way it was at slavery time to keep the blacks separate.
So I want to
and it didn't have to be black to be in the category of black.
Indian, Chinese, brown, mixed.
Right. Japanese were white, Chinese was supposed to be black because they had economic connections with the Japanese government, so they couldn't put the Japanese people in this category. You know?
So we're going to get right into the story of Trevor. So the very first thing that it starts out with is how his mom had to throw him out of a van. And how he says all bad things come from a broke down car. Especially on a Sunday when God's trying to tell you to stay at home. And then his mom said, what does mom
wants
say?
us to go to church.
Oh no. Anytime people say, oh, well, I think the Lord wants us to stay home, Mom, she'd be like, oh no, that's what the devil wants.
That's what the devil wants. I was
just another test.
Yeah.
I was fascinated in the way they got to church and how many times they went to church in one day.
Yes. So they used to go to 3 churches and sometimes evening church, which would make it a 4th church.
Yes.
So but that was all part of her I think it was all part of her master plan to never really let Trevor know that he was different, because she never isolated herself in church, because really church is church and you don't play these games in church.
Well, she had different reasons why she went to different churches.
But she also never isolated herself in church.
No.
Every church she went to, she went right to the front and sat down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it taught him, like, I'm going to the white church. I'm going to the Holy Spirit church. I'm going to so what was it like? It was like a Holy Spirit filled church that she went to. She went to a church because of scriptures. Then she went to a different church because
the second church offered deep analytical of the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
So one church concentrated on the scriptures, the other one concentrated on you could feel the Holy Spirit in the third church. And then they went to the black church.
Yeah.
So they went to the white church, they went to the black church. Then they ended up going back to the white church in the evening. Yeah.
And then when her car didn't work, what they had to do in South Africa, a lot of like their communities had to be very self-sufficient. So people would have like a little grocery shack where they sold you 1 egg at a time. Mm-hmm. They would have like a little, just little places. And another thing that they did is they had these mini buses where people use their cars. I guess it's like, what is that? That would be like Guru or Goober or something like that. So it was like, I think the beginning of Goober, but unofficially no electronics involved, where these people had their cars and they would, because white people weren't coming into, bus routes weren't going through black neighborhoods.
Right.
So if you were someone of color and you wanted to get to places, it was almost impossible because there wasn't a mode of transportation available. So they created their own mode of transportation. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is that in those neighborhoods where he lived, everybody had a driveway. They didn't have a car.
No car.
But they had a driveway.
Yes.
And I thought that was cool because it was his way of saying, like, no matter what your situation was, you were always keeping that hope alive, that there
Right.
would be a car one day.
Yes.
And what did he say? They built their houses, how did he say? They built their houses like how they buy their eggs, one wall at a time. I loved it. And then he said it didn't matter how big,
one room at a time.
exactly. And it didn't matter how big your house got. At the end of the day, you still had to go outside and share your toilet with your neighbor. So that kept you humble, you know, because it just is what it is.
Yeah, right.
When he didn't want to go to the toilet.
Oh my God. Yeah, so let's get there. So I think,
What page is that?
Blind great grandma.
yeah, so Coco was, she was not the grandma, she was the great grandma. And Coco, what did he say? Coco was like a robot to him. Because Coco couldn't see, and they had to move her, and they would always take her from her bed and move her to the warmest place in the house, in the kitchen by the stove, and she would just sit there, and then they would move her back to bed, and that's all she did. And she had like these rhetoric phrases that you could do with her, and you couldn't do that much more with her, Coco, than that. And so so he always felt like she wasn't even a human, she was just a robot. Like he would come in the room and be like, good morning, and she would be like, good morning. And what would they do? Or, you know, like everything was like a robotic conversation, and she couldn't see. So one time, his mom always went to work because she had to provide. And his grandma, I think she did things too, and, you know, had to maintain the house and leave and come and go. And then Coco, the great grandma, always stayed at home. And then Trevor hated using the outhouse.
Especially when it rained.
Oh, yes. That one was too funny.
So because all that kid do is think, he would just think of some stuff and then he would just do it. And it was horrible for the women that had to raise him.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so who wants to tell the story? I don't know.
Very mischief.
He got some newspaper,
There you go.
put it in the middle of the kitchen there, and then he took a dump, and Coco said, what is that sound? And he stops in the middle of it. She quiets down, so he finishes up, and then he wraps it all up and puts it in the trash can and puts some trash on top of it.
Yeah.
But
And
what?
then when they come home, Coco says, I think there's a dead bird or dead animal in here. It smells
When she kept trying to get him to find out who was somebody in the house, because he was really quiet, she thought she
He
was
knew
by himself.
she knew somebody was in the house, and
Yeah.
she thought it was, because this is the thing. Even though they were Christian, they still believed in their native
Spirits and
spirits and things like that. So they they were like faithful Christian people. Like every night there was a Bible study at somebody's house, which was praise and prayer, praise and prayer, praise and
Right.
prayer. Every Sunday they went to church. Religion was so serious for them. It was not a hobby, it was a lifestyle.
Yeah, it was.
You know, like in America, it's just like something you do on Sunday for some people, but I mean, it was like his life. His whole life was that. And he got all the special things from that too, though, because he got hand-me-down clothes, he got books, those things that his mom wanted him to have. A lot of those things were available in churches too. But so first thing first, he pooped on that toilet, on that
Floor.
newspaper. He
Yeah.
folded it up. Coco knew somebody was in the house, and there was a smell associated with that dump. He put it in the rubbish and buried it underneath. When the grandma came home and the mom came home, they all smelled it too. But his mom has this keen scent, ability to find a scent. So she found that stuff in the rubbish.
right away.
And then they had to have a prayer meeting, but they can't get rid of a witch or a spirit and not get everybody on the street there, because then that spirit would just go in somebody else's house.
Right.
So they had to, and then Trevor was feeling really foul. They had to get all their neighbors, bring them all to their yard, have a prayer service, and then boom, their mom says, Trevor, you got to pray because you can pray in English, and you are white because he was
Jesus
mixed,
was white.
and Jesus is white, and therefore the prayer will be answered quicker.
If you pray, Trevor,
yes,
the prayer will be
and
answered.
he loved to pray, but he was like, "Oh, hold up, what?" And they were like, telling them to kill that spirit, and he was like, "What?" Because he believed in God and he believed in power of prayer, so he was like, hold up, that's kind of harsh. Like, we
Well-
can't have.
Well, if, killing the spirit means killing him because
Yes,
he's the culprit.
he was like, oh no. And then his prayer was so weak that day. Let me tell you, he was a strong prayer, but that was a weak prayer. And then like when he went to bed that night, it even tells about how he had a conversation with God, and he was like, oh, Jesus, like, I feel so bad that I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Please forgive me and I feel like that's awesome. Like, he didn't come out to the family and confess, but he did confess to his God about it, and I thought that was cool that he put it in the book, And he was a young child. He was probably 4, because they were still hiding him in the house then. He couldn't go out and play. So he had to pray to kill himself, and then he had to pray to forgive that. Get that forgiven. Okay, so Alexa, turn off the alarm. Oh, she never hears.
Alexa, stop.
Oh, good. All right, she listens to her.
My
That's
Alexa
great.
works.
So, yeah. That's just one of the hilarious stories here. We only have 10 more minutes. I don't even know if we're actually going in order here, but the book is so funny. Trevor does so many things. Another thing that I thought was super funny is that communion. Remember the communion in the church?
Oh.
He was upset because he was not Catholic.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And they would never, and he's a hungry kid. He always
Mhm.
wants to eat the good food.
Mhm.
It wasn't the Catholic school.
Yes, and they
Yeah.
would not let him take
Have a wafer.
communion. And
Right.
then he just ate all
He ate all the
communion, drank all the grape juice. But
Yeah.
his mom didn't have a problem with it, because she was like, why would you deny a child the blood of Jesus? Like, that don't make no sense.
Yeah,
I
maybe,
can't-
maybe he needed all that.
Yeah, I really think he did. That probably saved his life. But I also wanted to talk about, like, Trevor never realized, like, that he had to pick like a group. But every time he had to pick a group, he always picked black people, because that's what he knew. And even though he was able to mingle in all the groups and be, what did he say? He was a camouflage
Chameleon.
chameleon, and it wasn't because of his color that he was able to camouflage.
spoke their
It was the
language, too.
language that he
That's right.
spoke everyone's language, and then he was accepted in every
Yeah.
division of the schools.
Zulu people want to beat him up, and he speaks to
But-
them in their
yeah.
language, and
But
suddenly
yeah.
they come around.
He would identify himself as black when he wanted to hang with the black. But remember the time when they was gonna beat him up? He hurried up and switched over to being white.
Yeah, and then the only
To
time he
protect
like
himself.
picked, but the only time he picked the group like he was hanging tight with them was when he went to jail. But that's in another chapter, so we'll
Yeah.
discuss that then.
Yeah, his
But
grandma was afraid to beat him.
oh my
because
God, yeah, we got to talk about that.
She said, I cannot beat this kid. He's white and he turns blue and purple. I might kill him.
Yes.
Mom says, just beat his ass.
Yeah,
His mom
so-
had no problem with it, but his grandma never ever gave him a spanking.
Because she
even
was-
he deserved many of them.
The grandma said he was the worst kid. He is the most rebellious. He does the most mischievous things, but I can't hurt him because I'm afraid to hurt a white child. Because in her mind, that was still inbred in her too. And she said, I know how to beat a black kid. I don't know how to beat a white kid because they turn all these colors.
Right.
I think I'm going to kill him. His mom's like, no, he fine. Go get a switch. Come on.
Yeah. She said, beat him.
So and then in the story it also says that he was able to experience white privilege all his life technically, because he was able to get away with things because of these categories that they have in South Africa. And he says, so therefore he says, I understand white privilege, and I know why people don't want to what did he say? He says, I know why people don't want to say, oh no, that's not right, you're favoring me, because it's nice to be favored. And he talks about that, but the way he talks about it is like in a funny way.
Yes.
So you can like laugh about it and be like, yeah, this is happening, it happens every day in many, many countries, but it's funny how he's bringing it to light, and how he can honestly say, I understand that, and I know
relate.
what that is, even though I'm a black man. So I thought that was really cool too, for him to give you that insight about what it is, because you're actually hearing it from a black person, and you're also hearing it from someone that understands what it is to be black. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I thought that was really cool too. So is there something else you guys want to touch on before we? I mean, here it talks about the chameleon, and then at some point he's not in the Catholic school anymore. He goes to another school, and that school is not integrated like how his first school was, and that's the first time he has to make that choice. I think he was 10, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they put him in the
middle
A class,
school,
and the
Yes.
other people were in the B class. He thought he was the only like colorful person in the world there, except for this Indian kid. And then they went to recess, and he was like, "Whoa, everybody's black. We're like the only white class."
Right.
And then he decided that he was going to go see his counselor, and he said, "I want to be with my people. Like,
Yeah.
I
want to be with the
I
black.
want to be where I belong because I don't really belong here because this isn't really me, you know." So, I just love this book. I mean, if you love the story of a mother and a son, you will love this book. And if you love the story of a mother and a son and a rebellious son, a curious son, somebody that's really hyperactive and into a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, what did he do? Oh, let's talk about this dog thing. Fufu.
I wanted to talk about the conversation him and his mom had.
Yeah.
Because mom was scolding him for being so mischief and getting in trouble all the time. And he told her, he said, "That's because you're my mom."
Yes, and she was very mischievous when she was young. Her story,
Yeah.
her story is a story of love. She decided to have a child with this German Switzerland man because she was choosing to have a child. She was not somebody that just got pregnant. She approached this man. She liked him. She had hung out with him before. She said, "You don't need no responsibility, but I want a child. I want something to love. I want to raise something that I love." So that's the beginning of their story.
Yep.
And then, where was I going with this? Oh, but her story is that she always wanted the love of her dad. Her mom raised her, she wanted the love of her dad. At a certain age, she told her mom she was going to go live with her dad. Her dad had many other women. He didn't really have time for her like that. Her dad took her, didn't even take her home, took her to his sister's house,
Yes.
a place where she said she was cattle.
Yes.
She had to get up every morning, do all this farm work, and then there was 14 other kids there that were not wanted, you know what I mean? And they had to fight for food and figure out how to survive in an environment where there was little. And then she ran away from there. She went to secretary school. She taught herself English. There was a teacher there in that community that taught her English.
Yes.
That was her first step. Then she went to some kind of school, worked in a factory where they paid her with a meal.
Yes.
Remember that? And then she went to called her mom, asked for a train ticket because that lady had died. She went back home, went to secretary school, and then started to work with living in her mom's house. And then she talks about the black tax, about how when you're getting ahead and you've lived in this environment where everyone is struggling, how you have to take care of your family and you can't really get ahead. You just help everybody else survive that you're living with. And you got to think, there's a great grandma, there's a grandma, there's you, there's your child, and then there's your sister, right? It was her sister that was there with her kids off and on whenever she was into it with her husband.
I think so.
Yeah.
So that was
The sister's
5
kids.
houses, 5 families and 2 rooms, a 2-room house
Yes.
with a shack in the back that they would rent out to migrant workers. Remember? So we're going to carry on with this. We want to. We read this book. We're not carrying on with this because it takes 6 weeks to read this book. When you pick this book up, you have it done in a week. Trust me. We're carrying on with this because we want to encourage you to get this book and start this reading journey. Join our book club and let's talk about something that's real and that's funny and that's, you know,
Educational.
yeah, and still
very educational.
written in such an entertaining way. You know, I mean,
He is so funny.
he is, and I would recommend that you watch his interviews with Coco. It's not
Yeah.
Coco, it's his. So the grandma had to have a different name because Coco is his grandma, but the other person, the robot, was his great grandma.
Great grandma.
But Coco is actually the person that was like raised him.
I think it's Coco.
So I don't
The
remember.
interview with
I
Coco.
don't know what the great grandma's name is, but it's okay. That stuff's not really important, you know. The important part is that we let you know like how this mother and son and how she created this environment for her kid where he was technically born free even though he was born a crime. And then once she didn't have to hide him when he was past 5 years old, she used to take him to go see nice neighborhoods, to go have picnics. Like, they did things that didn't cost money, but she was always taking him somewhere, showing him the world. And she was criticized for that.
Yes, she was.
People would criticize her. They would always say to her, why are you raising him like he's white? And she would say, I'm raising him to be free.
Yes.
Isn't that what she would say?
Yes.
Yeah. She's like, I am raising him to be free. I am raising him to be more than this.
Well,
and what did
they also was saying to her that why are you taking him places that he'll never be able to accomplish? He'll never be able, you know, when she was taking him to the nice neighborhoods, he'll never be able to live in a house like that. So why are you taking him to those
Well, why
places?
do we all make these driveways?
Yeah. So.
We get cars one day. You know what I mean? And then
he also, all the way through, he had a relationship with his father too,
Yes.
until she married that other jerk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, and he was what, 8, 9 or so by that.
By that time.
Yeah. And we'll get into that next week because that's a whole other.
Because even when they went to the zoo, they had to walk in separate groups because they couldn't be seen all three together. you
And
know,
she
as a
would hire
family.
people or ask people that looked more like Trevor to go with her places, and then she would be in the back. Like, she always took him to the park because what'd she say? Later on in life, he found out that what his mom did was like fetching like a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he didn't know that. Like, had so much energy, she would throw a ball, he'd catch it, bring it back, and she would do it like for hours at a time to try to wear him out for the people that would watch him when she had to work or do things. But so Trevor has always been in the world, but she put him. At first, she took him in the world with other
people that
people,
were his
and then
color.
So we're gonna stop because it's past 30 minutes. We're gonna start again in 2 weeks. There's so much to talk about. I'm telling you, like, get this book. It's so good. Trevor Noah, Born a Crime. Get this book. Join us in 2 weeks.
You will not be able to put it down.
You are going to love it. Trust me. We can't say enough about this book. But we're not going to keep you forever. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye. Oh, dang, we didn't even talk about it.